Wednesday, you and other local activists went to one government center to protest, I presume, a tweet from the president that not every vote should be counted. Why do you think that every vote should be counted? And what is your message to people who may be a little skeptical about mail in ballots or other forms of voting, especially due to the pandemic, where more people are voting by mail instead of actually physically going to a polling location?
Well, voting is the fundamental of our democracy. And many of the shortcomings that we've seen with America have derived from not everyone having equal access to the ballot, right? So what makes this country great is everyone having a voice and buying in and participating in our democracy. So when you silence that, you're essentially silencing the most fundamentally important part of America. And that just cannot be allowed. Effectively, I think Donald Trump is trying to function in an authoritarian dictator type way. And I'm grateful for people in the media. It's taken about 5 years, but yesterday they finally stopped broadcasting his blatant lies because they realized this is a very sensitive time in our nation's history, and you cannot spread that type of propaganda. It's simply irresponsible for the preservation of our republic.
Would you say your cause is a partisan cause, so something just for Joe Biden supporters and Democrats, or is it something that you believe should be a bipartisan cause where both Republicans, Democrats, Independents can all come together and ensure that democracy is protected?
Yeah, I actually had a Joe Biden Harris shirt on before this interview, and I took it off for that very reason, because this is not a partisan issue. At least it shouldn't be, but unfortunately, we're seeing it become that. Every vote should count, right? No matter who wins or who loses, every vote should count. Every vote matters. I find it ironic. The same people that when we say Black Lives Matter, say all lives matter, tend to be the same demographic trying to suppress the votes, right? And not upholding that every vote matters. So, there's a long tradition of this. We have to remember it was only it was only 100 years ago, 1920, when women were able to get the right to vote. And essentially, it's only been about 50 years since Black folks have been able to vote. And still, there continues to be voter suppression efforts. They just, over the past couple of years, they just took back the Voting Rights Act. And so we've seen a lot of voter suppression in places in the South where that has been where that was a problem in the 60s, and it's becoming a problem again now. So it should not be a partisan issue. And that's the thing about democracy. And I think, unfortunately, when it comes to the partisan fight with politics, increasingly because of, I think, of the demographic shifts that are happening in this country, you see one side that is gerrymandering more than another to win, and that's just not right. I think if you look at the results, I saw a statistic the other day where I think over the past 30 years, all except for one time, a Democrat has won the popular vote when it came to presidential elections, yet it hasn't always turned out that way. And I think that is because of the tools that were put in our systems, really to suppress the vote from people that weren't white, people that didn't own property. And so, I think a lot of Americans on a surface level can realize that that's wrong. But systematically, as a nation, we haven't done anything about it. But, at this point in time, it's important that we really put pressure in every corner of this country at this particular moment to make sure it's clear that we demand every vote to count. It's not just something that we talk about here. It's not enough that just because all the votes in Toledo were counted, or Michigan. Every single vote all across this country, and even for our troops overseas, needs to be counted. So yeah, that's how I feel about that.
And I do want to mention, while I am speaking to you, you are supporting Joe Biden. I did, in fact, reach out to the Lucas County Republican Party chairman. I have yet to hear back from him. I just want to make that clear as a disclaimer, to make sure that we hear both sides of what's happening right now. I also want to ask you about the results of the election locally. Of course, the presidential election is getting a lot of attention because so many people have just been focused, and that always appears to be the big election for everyone. So my question to you is, were you pleased with the results of last night, or November 3rd's results of that election on the local level? And do you feel that some votes may have been suppressed?
Well, woo, you asked the best questions, Jaden. So, I think that I accept all the results from all the elections. Obviously, there were some people I would have liked to see do better. I'm kind of surprised it didn't do better. Right? I mean, given what I've seen with Victor Dale Jr. in the Oregon Police Department and TPD, I am concerned, genuinely, about Mike Navarre being our next sheriff. So there, I said it. but I accept the result. I don't think that there was any type of negligent behavior that caused him. I mean, he got the most support in our community, and he won, right? And he will be our next sheriff, and I hope he does well. In some other races, there is I mean, there's obviously gerrymandering, right? If you take a look at Nick Robando, who was running for Congress, his district covers 14 counties. It's deliberately drawn up in a way where that it's nearly impossible for anybody that's not a Republican to win that race, right? I think if you also look at the state house race with Nancy Larson and Derek Marin, I think the way that that's drawn up is gerrymandering, right? And gerrymandering is also bad for our democracy because it creates an environment where accountability is less likely to happen, right? When you have a monolithic group, or then the person in office tends to not engage as much with the public, and it's harder for them to be pushed and pulled on issues when you get that type of gerrymander district, right? So, yes and no, right? I think countywide, Lucas County did well with the election, but I think on the state level and on the federal level, there is some gerrymandering, and that is a problem.
Activist Julian Mack, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Jaden.